Okay, so we've done factoring with the GCF, we've done factoring with Xbox or grouping, and now our last kind of main factor we're going to do is difference of squares, which the stuff we learned previously we can still use. Okay, so our central question is, what are the characteristics of a difference of squares problem? So if we look, a difference of squares has just two terms with a minus between it, hence the idea difference is our subtraction, and then 2, and then squares, they are both squared. And then they both nicely factor to a minus b and a plus b. So to start with, though, let's look at it the way we used to do it with Xbox. So our a is 9, our c is 16. So our top, where we get a times c, is a negative 144. And then on bottom, there is no b value, so we have 0. So 1 multiplies to 144 and adds to 0. That's going to be a negative 12 and a positive 12. So we have 9x squared there. We have negative 16 there, negative 12x, and positive 12x. And then just like before, we look for our GCFs. So my GCF on here is going to be 4, and then I have the negative there, so I'm going to pull that negative out with it. Here it's 3x. This way it is 3x. And then this way we have a positive 4. So then this becomes 3x minus 4 and 3x plus 4. And so you can see a is the same and that b is the same like we had up here. And let's do this one here, difference of squares. So a is 1, c is a negative 25, so we have a negative 25. Our b is 0. 1 multiplies negative 25, adds 0 is a negative 5 and positive 5. And then same deal, look for our GCFs. So here we have 5. Here we have an x. There we have an x. And here we have a negative 5. So our factors are x plus 5 and x minus 5. Now, we can start seeing some patterns here. So as you look at number 3 here, really when we ask the question is, what squares to give us 4x squared? Well, we know that's x, and then that's going to be 2. So that's our a. And then the next question is, what squares to give us 36? Well, that's 6, and that becomes our b. So then we have 2x minus 6, and then 2x plus 6. Now, we have an issue here because this is not factored completely, because we did not stop and do our first check. So as we go back and redo this one, remember the very first thing we need to check for is GCF. Does the polynomial have anything in common? Well, in this case, our GCF for this one is a 4. So that leaves me with x squared minus 9 with that 4 on the outside. Now, same deal. We have two terms with a difference, so we look for our squares. Same questions. What squares to give us x squared? Well, that's just x. What squares to give us 9? Well, that's 3. So then this completely factored then becomes our 4 on the outside still, and then x plus 3 and x minus 3, because it's a, b, b, positive, negative. If you went negative, positive, that doesn't change anything. Now as I look at number 4, is there a GCF? No, our GCF on this one is just 1. And then the question is, what squares to give us x squared? Well, that's x. What squares to give us 100? That's 10. But before we did any of that, we should have checked. Remember, it is a difference. So first thing I should check for is there a subtraction, which there is not. So that is a positive, which we call then prime. There's no GCF we can factor out, and we can't factor that, so that is prime. All right, so let's factor these completely. I have the X boxes here if you want to use them. I'm just going to go A and B, so what squares to give me X squared? Well, that's X. What squares to give me 49 Y squared? So now we have two variables, but it doesn't change anything. That's just 7Y. So then our answer for this would be X minus 7Y and X plus 7Y. Same thing, is there a GCF for that one? Nothing goes into 25 and 81, so our GCF is 1. And then what squares to give us 25x squared? So that's 5x. What squares to give us 81? Well, that's 9. So then we go 5x and 9. 5x and 9 make one positive, one negative. All right, again, GCF is just 1, so there's really no GCF. And so as we look at this, what squares to give us x to the 4th? Well, in this case, it becomes x squared. And then what squares to give us 16? Well, that's 4. So then we get x squared and 4, and x squared and 4 make one positive, one negative. Now this one, we are not done. X squared plus 4 we can't factor anymore, but x squared minus 4 we can factor. What squares to give us x squared is x. What squares to give us 4 is 2. One positive, one negative, and then that is your completely factored problem on that one. All right, so 6 problems there for you to work on, and then we'll talk about those in class. And then you have your quizzes, and then answer the essential question, check in there what characteristics of a difference of squares problem is needed.